Chapter 13. The Golden Glen Nursing Home was 4 blocks from Raymie's house. Raymie could have ridden her bike, but she decided to walk so that she would have time to flex her toes and isolate her objectives. Every day in Life Saving 101, Mr. Stephanopoulos had all students stand on the dock and flex their toes and isolate their objectives. So just like we have objectives on the board. Mr. Stephanopoulos believed that flexing your toes cleared your mind, and that once your mind was clear, it was easy to isolate your objectives and figure out what to do next. For instance, save whoever was drowning. "What is my objective?" whispered Raymie. She stopped. She flexed her toes inside her tennis shoes. "My objective is to do a good deed, and also to become Little Miss Central Florida tired so that my father will come back home." Her stomach clenched up. What if Louisiana won? What if Beverly sabotaged the contest? What if Raymie's father never came home, and no matter what Raymie did, a gigantic seabird flew through Raymie's brain, its talons extended? "No, no, no," she whispered. She flexed her toes. She cleared her mind. She isolated her objectives. Do a good deed, she thought. Become Little Miss Central Florida tired. Do a good deed. Do a good deed. After a lot of toe flexing, Raymie arrived at the Golden Glen and discovered that the door was locked. There was a sign that read that this door is locked. Please ring the bell for admittance. An arrow on the sign pointed to a button. Raymie pressed the button and heard a bell ringing somewhere deep inside the building. She waited. She flexed her toes. An intercom crackled to life. "This is Martha speaking. It's a golden day at the Golden Glen. How may I assist you?" "Hello," said Raymie. "Hello," said the woman named Martha. Said Raymie, "I'm here to do a good deed." "Isn't that wonderful?" said Martha. Raymie wasn't sure if this was a statement or a question, so she said nothing in response. There was a long silence. Raymie said, "I brought a book about Florence Nightingale." "The nurse?" said Martha. Said Raymie, "She has a lamp, and the book is called A Bright and Shining Path, The Life of Florence Nightingale." "Fascinating," said Martha. The intercom gave a lonely crackle. Raymie took a deep breath. She said, "Can I come inside and read the book to someone?" "Of course," said Martha. "I'll buzz you in." There was a long, loud buzz, and Raymie heard the door unlatch. She reached forward and grabbed the handle and entered the Golden Glen. Inside, it smelled like floor wax and old fruit salad, and something else, a smell that Raymie did not want to think about too much. A woman with a blue sweater draped over her shoulders stood behind a counter at the end of the hallway. She smiled at Raymie. "Hello," she said. "I'm Martha. I am the person who was going to read to someone," said Raymie. She held up Florence Nightingale. Of course," said Martha. She stepped out from behind the counter. "Come with me." She took Raymie's hand and led her up a flight of stairs. So we're at the top of page 61. And into a room where the floor was polished and shining so brightly that it didn't look like a floor at all. It looked like a lake. Raymie's heart thudded and skipped. She had the feeling that she was going to understand things. Finally, at last, she had this feeling often, that some truth was going to be revealed to her. She had felt it in the Tag and Bag parking lot with Mr. Stephanopoulos when he was telling her goodbye. She had felt it earlier that day, standing with Beverly and Louisiana in Ida Nee's backyard. Sometimes she felt it when she was sitting at Miss Borowski's feet. But so far, the feeling had never really panned out. The truth had never revealed itself. But maybe this time would be different. The room expanded. The brightness got brighter. Raymie thought about safe-cracking and sabotaging and the flying elefantes. She thought about her father sitting in the diner with Leanne Dickerson. She thought about Edgar, the drowning dummy, and gigantic seabird with wings like angels. She thought about all the things she didn't understand but wanted to. And then the sun went behind a cloud and the lake turned back into a floor. And Martha said, "Let's go talk to Isabel." And it was all over. The feeling of almost understanding was gone, and Raymie didn't know any more than she had before. Martha led Raymie over to an old lady sitting in a wheelchair parked by a window. "Isabel's eyesight is not what it once was," said Martha, "so she's not able to read like she used to." "I can read just fine," said Isabel. This is just not true, Isabel," said Martha. "You are as blind as a bat." Isabel made a fist with her right hand and brought it down on the arm of the wheelchair. "Wham, wham, wham! Don't bother me, Martha," she said. She was a tiny woman, and her hair was pure white, and someone had braided it into a complicated crown on top of her head so that she looked like a fairy godmother. Her eyes were very blue. Martha turned to Raymie. "What's your name, child?" she asked. Raymie had never been called child before. She knew that she was a child, of course, but there was something oddly comforting about someone addressing the situation directly. "I'm Raymie," she said. "Isabel?" said Martha. "This is Raymie." "So what?" said Isabel. She would like to read to you about the life of Florence Nightingale." "You're kidding," said Isabel. "Isabel," said Martha, "please, the child wants to do a good deed." Isabel looked up at Raymie. Her eyes were bright. She didn't look like she was as blind as a bat. It was more like she had X-ray vision. Raymie could feel Isabel looking right inside her. She squinched up her soul as small as she could and pushed it to one side so that it was hidden. A good deed?" said Isabel. "Why do you want to do a good deed? What is your purpose exactly?" Her purpose? Was that the same thing as an objective? Raymie flexed her toes. Just, to do a good deed," she said. Isabel kept staring at her. Raymie stared back. She made her soul smaller and smaller. She imagined it becoming as tiny as the period at the end of a sentence. No one would ever find it. I like that, those two sentences. I'm going to say it again. She imagined it becoming as tiny as a period at the end of a sentence. No one would ever find it. "Fine," said Isabel, after what seemed like a very long time. "Who cares? Read to me about Florence Nightingale." "Isn't that wonderful?" said Martha to Raymie. Isabel would like to learn about Florence Nightingale. Chapter 14. I couldn't care less about Florence Nightingale," said Isabel as Raymie pushed her wheelchair down a long hallway lined with closed doors. "Do-gooders don't interest me. They are the least interesting people on the planet. And Florence Nightingale was a do-gooder if there ever was one." "Okay," said Raymie, because she couldn't think of anything else to say. Also, it was hard to talk. She was out of breath from pushing the wheelchair. Isabel was heavier than she looked. "Faster," said Isabel. "What?" said Raymie. "Go faster," said Isabel. Raymie tried to push the wheelchair faster. She could feel little pinpricks of sweat on her upper lip. Her arms hurt. So did her legs. "Take my hand!" shouted a terrible voice from behind one of the closed doors. "What was that?" said Raymie. She stopped pushing the wheelchair. "What are you doing?" said Isabel. "Why are you stopping?" "Take my hand!" screamed the voice again. Raymie's heart jumped up high in her chest and then sank down low. "Who is that?" asked Raymie. "That's Alice Nebley," said Isabel. "Ignore her. She knows one sentence, and she says it day and night. The monotony of her request is too horrible to bear." To Raymie, the voice didn't sound like it belonged to someone named Alice. Instead, it sounded like the voice of a troll who was standing under a bridge, hoping that an unsuspecting billy goat would walk by. Raymie's heart was pounding somewhere deep inside of her now. It felt as if it had moved positions permanently, from her chest to her stomach. She thought how nice it would be if she were like Beverly Topinski, and afraid of nothing. Raymie took a deep breath and started to push the wheelchair again. "That's right," said Isabel. "The trick is to keep moving. Never stop moving."